Okay, so for me, disruption is, I always like to look at the good side of disruption, and you get there by thinking out of the box. That's the first step. I think you first have to understand the box, you have to define it, and once you define it, you know how to go out. Once you know how to go out, you look for really additional value, a better experience, more efficiency. How do you achieve a similar outcome with fewer problems, less costs, and really, I think, improve the overall satisfaction of all the people involved in that particular process. It's a kind of problem solving in a sense, and you can achieve it mathematically, but you also achieve it from the heart. Okay, I think that's a great question, especially because you're asking GreyOrange. So I think the millennials were very much the people who drove online consumption, right? And through consumption, of course, we have to fulfill. I think you see more traditional, bigger, larger companies having been dominant in the fulfillment side. But we are bringing a much more youthful, I think, in touch with the times way of approaching the fulfillment problem and solving it. And so not just consumption, but on the fulfillment, you're starting to see millennials and the younger generation putting together the whole solution to a new problem that is a problem it's a good problem because it's growing, right? Geographically, it's growing in terms of general numbers. You see the graphs, they all point upwards, but upward graphs means always there's a gap that you have to fill from where you are now and where you're expecting to go. I think the millennials do tend to think out of the box more easily. They're quicker to move on. If you have a bad idea, okay, let's fix it. Let's move to the next one. And whatever's good, you take with you. And I think that's one of the strongest traits that the millennial generation has that I respect a lot. I get my eureka moments in two ways. Actually, three ways. So the funnest way is when I talk to my 9-year-old daughter, because she thinks out of the box. And she comes up with some pretty good ideas. So I would borrow from her sometimes. The second is probably over a glass of good red wine. And that's usually with a small group of people.
Always helps.
Yeah, that helps. It does. Usually it's later in the night.
Right.
And the other is really with my teammates. I think everybody in our team is very dedicated, very focused. They're analytical. They don't let the numbers stop them from getting creative. So the discussions we have in front of a whiteboard and all the stuff we write up there, it usually ends up with a well thought out, tested, and workable solution to a problem that we're trying to solve. Sure, so changes are always incremental. I think you asked it in a nice way. No big change happens overnight because then it's a revolution. And revolutions are usually not necessarily sustainable. So we're incrementally changing. We think we're creating an industry, or we're helping to create an industry here, and we're changing the way fulfillment happens. We do it on different fronts. When we talk to the customers, we go through a process of educating, trying to understand their problem, then coming back and sharing how what we do or how we do it will help them with their problem. So it's a little bit of evangelism. It's about being a good listener. It's about being analytical and giving those baby steps. And when you add those up and you see the difference you can make, we always find that we are very successful in explaining our value proposition to the customer. In terms of the world, how we're changing the world, I think we are creating an industry. There's logistics, there's traditional logistics, which I have immense respect for, but automation and logistics have not really come together so well. It's always been about rigid automation, and we are doing something that we call intelligent automation. And here, really, it's the birth of something very new that I believe will be with us for many years to come. So e-commerce, I think originally If you look way back, it actually started B2B. So it's about integrating supply chains. If you look at, for example, a lot of Japanese manufacturers, they got their suppliers to integrate with them electronically very early on. That was, in my mind, the birth of e-commerce, especially from a B2B context. Today, the volumes are really happening in B2C, right? And all the problems we see that we're trying to solve tend to be driven by B2C. They're both interesting. The solutions and problems are getting more common and solving them also through common discussions. I think the real answer here is choices. So because everything is available real time at your fingertips, it means you're going to get a lot of choices, whether you're B2B or B2C. It means choices for what you're going to buy, how much you're going to buy it for, who you're going to buy it from. From a vendor or seller point of view, it means you get to choose how you're going to fulfill it. Are you going to be a low-cost provider? Are you going to be a high-value provider? What additional value might you bring? So it's that the abundance of choices and the power we get from being able to make that choice, which is best for us, and not just something we're forced to do. So we talked about choices, and I think every successive generation has more choices than the last. I had more choices than my dad. My daughter has more choices than me. I brought her here to the show last night while we were setting up. She loves the Butlers, our technology. And what I tell her is watch, look, listen before you decide, before you take your choices. Analyze both with your mind and your heart. But you really you will get your best choices when you watch, you look, and you listen. I think that's really the key, what the young people should do. Because again, the choices are so many, you don't want to react too quickly.